Okay, excellent. Well, welcome everybody to another session of the Automation Studio Deep Dive Series, the Bootcamp. Today we're going to be writing tracking data from Salesforce, from Marketing Cloud to Salesforce, the individual IER object. So we're going to be going over today, we're going to be going over the use case. We're going to be talking about the flow diagram of how this is all going to work. Then we're going to be in the platform. So we're going to be into the Salesforce CRM environment. We're going to take a look at the individual email results object, how that we're triggering an email, some emails that we've sent to populate the individual email results records and visualize that data. And then what we're going to want to do in Marketing Cloud is we're going to be populating fields in the send log for those email sends so that we can use that data to then use in an automation to update custom fields in the individual email results records from Marketing Cloud. So that's where the automation part of this use case is going to come in. Got a couple automations ready to build for that or showcase. And then we're using a journey to do the update of those CRM records. So we'll do a question and answer session after that. So our use case is that Cervelo Bank has launched a marketing campaign for sales to invite key contacts to a webinar. But they're noticing that there's a lot of low signups for the webinar. There's a couple of weeks to the webinar, and they haven't seen a lot of signups. So they wanted to get some understanding of how are people, how are the sales team doing inviting people to attend that webinar. So they're seeing, their sort of guess is that they're getting a lot of, low adoption from sales. So they want to develop a way in Salesforce so that they can visualize in email sends who's sending the email. So they can sort of take a look at it on a salesperson by salesperson basis to check to see who's actively promoting the webinar, so they can understand, okay, which salespeople need to be reminded a little bit more to send it out to their contacts versus the ones that might be doing a good job. So that's the problem they're trying to solve. So to get to that solution, we're going to be taking that data in Salesforce, those individual email results that the sales team might be using to say, okay, which salespeople are sending out emails, which aren't. And we want to populate in the individual email results a send from name and send from email field on there so that they can track and run reports and say, okay, this salesperson's sending out these emails, this one isn't. And then in Marketing Cloud, we're going to want to enable this. So we want to create the data point at time of send so that we can be able to capture that data. And then we're going to want to populate that data on the IER using an automated always-on solution. So let's take a look at how this is all going to come together because it's a multi-platform solution. So we're going to start in the individual email results. So this is all the data. We'll showcase this in the Salesforce environment so you can see what we're talking about. This is the database in Salesforce. For every email send, there's a record that's created that gives all those details. We're going to want to create 2 custom fields on that object so that we can capture that information and run reports so that we can see by who's sending out those emails. Now there's a way to connect this through Marketing Cloud, which is the individual email results object is synced over into Marketing Cloud. So we're going to want to, for each email send, when Marketing Cloud sends that email, individual email result record is created. That ends up getting synced over to Marketing Cloud. And we're going to want to match that data to the send log and use an automation to identify those records where they don't have the send from name and the send from email address populated And then we're going to use a journey to populate those fields in the individual email results object. And then one thing we'll cover pretty quickly today is that in order to get the send log to populate the data, in order to populate it into the individual email results, we need to update the email so that it is writing to the send log. So a couple of different areas there. We'll come back to this diagram because it's probably a little bit, probably went over just a little bit there as far as what we're going to be covering. And let me just open up the chat. So please, I'll ask for questions as we move along here. And I'll just ask a quick question. Anybody familiar with the individual email results object, something that you use in your day-to-day environment? Do folks have the Salesforce Marketing Cloud instance connected to Salesforce? Is that your typical use case? And you can drop in answers to that question whenever you get a second. So. Okay, so let's see, let's come back to the deck. All right, we're gonna go now, we'll come back to this diagram and let's go into Salesforce and take a look at an example of an individual email results record. So I'm in Salesforce and I'm in a contact record. It can either be contact record or a lead record. And depending on where you place them on, where your related list is and your layout, these are examples of individual email results for email sends. So if we click into one of these individual email results, you can see all of this data is populated from Marketing Cloud at a time of send, usually like an hour or two later. You can see the name of the email, the subject line, when it was sent, if they've engaged upon it, and all of that. So what we want to do today is that to save time, we created two new custom fields here, this send from name and some send from email. And so what we want to do is, if we've got this populated in Marketing Cloud, we want to come back and populate this data on the individual email result so that you can run a report and be able to see if you're looking at a particular email, you want to be able to see who sent that email name and email address so you can track and see if they're successfully sending out to their contacts. So we'll be actually populating maybe this record or some other records using that automation today, seeing that end-to-end and built out. So let's take a look at the first part of what we're going to be building out today, which is how to populate particular records data in the send log in Marketing Cloud so that that data can be available to be populated in the individual email results. So what we did to illustrate this is I created a journey where we're sending out this webinar invite. And if we take a look at this email, it's a pretty basic email. And we have a code snippet up here in the email itself where we're using AmpScript to populate the send from name and send from email in the send log itself. So let's go take a look at the send log for those who are, just to give a quick overview of what is in the send log and why that's important. Because this will be an important data store for us to use this data to identify and populate the individual email results records. So your send log is a unique data extension. There's only one, you can only create one send log per, I think it's per business unit. I think you can create them in multiple business units. And in the send log, when you create it, it comes up with some standard fields. These job, list, batch, and sub ID are ways to identify the individual send log records. Now we've created a send from name and a send from email field in the send log. So this is part of the data that we want to populate in the individual email results. But in order to get to that data, we have to populate that data at time of send so that we can query the send log to pull in that data. So that's where in this journey, in our AMP script, we are writing this AMP script code to populate those values in the send log. It's relatively straightforward to populate a value in the send log. All you have to do is set a variable, name that variable the exact, sorry, I'll come down to these two, the exact name of the field in the send log. And then when you set that variable, depending on how you're setting it, it will populate that send from name, send from email, which matches the send from name and send from email in the send log. So in our example, what we're doing is we are, say we've got a campaign trying to promote this webinar, right? Come join us for this special webinar. So we've created a campaign in Salesforce, and we've told all of our salespeople, take your contacts and drop them into this campaign, and that will send out this email so that they get the invite and they can come to the webinar. So the data that's coming through for this email is based on a campaign member that's being fed from the journey itself. So if we go back to the journey, you can see this journey is a Salesforce data entry event that's pulling in those campaign members as long as they've been dropped into this Cervelo sales push campaign. It's coming in and it's populating some certain values that we're going to be using in the AMP script itself. So when you come over here and take a look at the AMP script, when you're seeing some of these variables that we're setting, you can see this campaign member created by ID. That's a field that we had selected in the entry settings, this created by ID field, to populate that value so that we can use it in our AMP script. And the reason why we're using that particular value is that this is going to give us the name and the email address of that salesperson who dropped them in the campaign. So when you drop a contact into the campaign, when that record is created, the created by ID is the ID of the Salesforce user who dropped them into the campaign and created that campaign member. So to get that, the send from name and the send from email, we're setting this variable, which is the ID of the person who dropped them into the campaign. And then what we're doing is we're looking up the user synchronized date extension in Salesforce. Once we find that match based on that user ID that's provided, then in that synchronized date extension, for that user record, they have a name and an email address that we can use, and that's what we're going to use to populate the send from name and the send from email. So anyways, we wanted just to walk through this a little bit quickly because we want to focus more on the automation itself. But this is the way of how we're going to be able to populate this data in the send log so that we can query it and use it to update in the individual email results object. Any questions on the send log and how to populate data in the send log real time at send time using AMP script? Okay, please ask any questions as we're moving forward. Okay, so now once we've got this data populated in the send log, let's go and see if we can visualize that data. So what I've done in preparation for this demo is I've dropped in a number of, okay, the question. Can we see the function to update the send log? Okay, so great question, Raja. It's actually not a function. It's all you have to do in your email body is use AMP script to set variables based on the fields that you want to populate in the send log. So I'll give you a real basic example. A field that is popular to have populated for each send in the send log is this email ID. It tells you the actual unique ID for the email. And so in the send log, we have this email ID field that we've created, and we want to populate that email ID field. So all we have to do in the AMP script is set a variable called email ID, and we're setting it to this personalization string, which is an out-of-the-box personalization string that happens that you can leverage at time of send. You just need to use this syntax of _ email ID. And that's all you need to do to populate that value in the send log. And yes, Kabir, the send from name variable field syntax has to be the exact name of the field in the send log. Great question. So let's go so what I've done, just to sort of visualize this data, what I've done is I've created a couple of contacts in the Salesforce environment. Let's go to one of those contacts that I've created. So here's this Tim IER record. And what I've done is, let's see if we can go to the campaigns that they're in. So I've dropped them into this Cervelo sales push campaign in the Salesforce environment. Now, this is the exact same campaign, this Cervelo sales push campaign, that as long as I drop that contact into this campaign, it's going to pull them into the journey. Now, this email that we're looking at with all this AMP script is part of this journey. So when I was sent this email, in the send log, it should populate my name and email address as the user in the send log itself. So let's go to the send log and find that actual subscriber and take a look at the data in the send log just to verify that that data came through. So we're going to navigate, because the send log, our send log's pretty small, it's only 1,000 records. We can take a look at it, and because it's, we're going to look at it in Contact Builder because it only shows the first 200 records in Email Studio. So we're going to navigate to our send log. We're going to go to the Records tab, and we're going to go to the end of the send log, because again, I sent this out this morning, and we can go find that record. Okay, so you can see in the send log, I sent about 9 different emails this morning. You can see from the timestamp 214. And you can see from this send from name, send from email, you can see that email ID also as well. You can see that data is being populated because of that AMP script. So you can see these 3 contacts I dropped in. I logged in as a different user and dropped in a couple other ones. So you can see this data being populated in the send log itself. And you can see other emails that were sent that didn't have that AMP script in there. So obviously it was not populated. So you want to make sure that for all of your emails, if it's something you want to capture, make sure that's in like that AMP script is in every footer. But these are the data points that we want to, again, populate in the individual email results records. And so we had to go through this exercise of populating the data in the send log so that we can connect this record, this send record, with the individual email results record that's created in Salesforce so that we can populate the name and the email address. Let's see if we have any other questions. Okay, fantastic. Okay, so we're seeing that data populated. Now what we want to do is we want to we're going to go back to this flow diagram and just talk about what we've covered. So we covered this part now where we've done an email send. We created this script to populate the name in the email, and that email was sent, and now it's populated in the send log, right? And then an individual email result record was created as well, because at time of send, that gets created in the Salesforce environment. Now we've got this data in both of these environments. Now we want to run an automation to combine both of these data points so that we can identify and say, okay, I want to know the individual email results record, and I want to know that send log record because it has that from name and from email. I'm going to use an automation and a query to combine those data sources so that we can identify that individual email results record and the from name and from email address, so we can drop that into a journey and populate these fields in the records itself. Okay, so let's do that. We're going to do this. We're going to build this query from scratch to create this automation, just to walk through that process. Again, combining these two data points to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into Query Studio. Let me just duplicate this tab. And we're going to build this from scratch just to sort of walk through that exercise and how to connect using an automation and using a query, how to connect the individual email results objects with the data, which is coming from Salesforce, with the data that you have in Marketing Cloud. So whenever we're creating a query, there are those three main sections, the select from and where. So like we talked about in those data models, the two data stores that we're looking to pull from are the send log and the individual email results that are coming from Salesforce. So let's start first with the send log, since we were just looking at that. So first we're going to copy the name of the send log. And we're going to go into our query. And let's just call this S for send log. Now we want to join the individual email results records that are coming from Salesforce. So to do that, we're going to go into Contact Builder. And if you've got the Marketing Cloud Connect, you will have all of those synchronized data extensions coming in from Salesforce. So let's go to those synchronized data extensions. You can see a variety of different objects here: account, contact. There is this individual email results object record. And these have all of those individual email results records in here. So what we want to do is let's copy this name, be in our join statement. And we'll do that. And then we're going to name this as IER. Okay. Now the important thing is how do you connect these two data sources together? So like we said when we were looking at the send log, there are these 4 key fields in the send log that you use for best practice to, whenever you need to identify a particular record in the send log, an email send, the job ID, list ID, batch ID, and sub ID. You don't have to use all of them, but it's recommended to use all 4. So we're going to do that today, just to follow that and follow best practice on that. Now, luckily, and this hasn't always been the case, but in the last year, this is the case, you've got those same 4 records in the individual email results. You can see this batch ID, job ID, list ID. Instead of sub ID, they use the subscriber ID. So this is going to be our key. These 4 keys match the what's in the send log. So this is how we're going to connect these two databases together. So to do that, I'm just going to start with the job ID in the send log, and we're going to want to make that equal to the corresponding value in the IER records. So there, but we need to name that IER. Okay, so that's the first part of that on statement. And I forgot to put an on statement in here. And we're going to want to do an and because we need to do this 3 more times. And I was going to hit return just so we doesn't go off screen. So let's go back to our send log. We're going to take that list ID. And we're going to paste that in there. Again, it needs to be an s.list ID. And let's go over to that list ID that is in the actual individual email results. And again, that's IER. And then we're going to do the next one, the next value, which is the batch ID. And we're going to set that equal to the IER batch ID. And then one more, let's just do this on here. And this is the sub ID, that's the last one. Equals the IER and the subscriber ID. Okay, there we go. That should give you the ability to match all these records. Now that we've got these two databases connected, we're going to be able to start outputting some data in our select statement that's going to be helpful for us to work in our automation. So the first thing that we're going to want to use, we're going to want to output, is the ID of the individual email results record, right? This is that important field that we're going to use to identify, okay, this is the individual email result record. It identifies in the journey to actually know which record do we update the values on there. Let's also add in the send log, we want to add in those values that we're looking to populate, which are the send from name and send from email, just so that we can see those values as well. Okay. And then just for outputting purposes, let's also take a look at those same values in the individual email results records. So let's see. Send from name and send from email. So let's go over here. And then let's copy in the send from email. And then last but not least, let's also add in the subscriber ID. It should be that contact ID. And let's put this in here, the subscriber key. Okay. All right, and then because we were looking at this one record, this one individual email results record, let's go back into this record. And let's see if we can literally find this record and validate it. So let's see, we were going into this individual email result record. Now in Salesforce, this in the URL, it does provide you the ID of that individual email result. So let's go in here. We're going to take that ID. We're going to add this to our where clause. We just want to see if we can output just that record. So when that ID equals there we go. And then just maybe a little bit of cleanup of my query to add some commas in here. And then I think I've seen where we need to add brackets in here. I think the system kind of balks a little bit at this email __ C. All right, fingers crossed. Let's see if we can run this query, see if we can avoid any errors. Okay, so far so good. Any questions on this query, what it's doing, how we linked these two databases together? Query Studio is a fantastic tool. It's free. So just look up Query Studio, the Salesforce app, and just gives you the ability to do exactly what we're doing. We're creating this query, running this data. It can be a little bit timely when you're querying your send log, but you can visualize your data. You can create queries without having to actually create the query and the data extension to visualize that data. Usually data gets populated pretty quickly. One thing I always like to do whenever I'm building a query, though, is in Query Studio, is to make sure that I save my query in like a notepad, because you don't really save it. So if I hit refresh, this entire query would be gone. So I just saved that. Okay, let's take a look at this record. It's pretty cool, actually, because this is a fantastic use case. We've got for this record, and let's see, the subscriber key is null on that, which is interesting. Let me see. I don't know why that's the case. Sometimes the subscriber key does not get written to on the send log. So let's see if we can populate the subscriber ID as well on this, just because I want to match this up to that contact so we can see it. But we can work around that for now. We'll just hit run for now. Okay. But this is a good use case because this subscriber has we had populated their email from name and an email address, send from name and send from email address. So we have that data in the send log, and we can also see, as we view in the individual email results, that it's not populated in the IER itself. So we can probably use this as a test case to see if we can get this data populated using this automation and the query itself. So let's just come back to our data. And again, that matches up. Okay, so, all right, so this is a different subscriber ID. Let me just see if there's a better value in the IER. Let's see. Definition, lead. Yeah, it's probably this is going to be a better value. The contact, we'll just add that in there. We won't refresh this though. That would give us the confirmation that's the actual contact that we were looking at. But you can see from this IER record that matches there, and you can sort of see that those two fields match. Okay, so now that we've got this this populated, we're going to run. We'll take you through now to the automation that we're going to be using to take this data and populate the record, the IER record, in the Salesforce environment. So if we go to the automation. Here, let's pull up this automation and take a look at what we've got in this automation. So very similar than what we were looking at. Here's the individual email results record object that we're syncing on the synchronized data extension. Here's the send log, again, the same way that we link those two databases together. In this one example, we used a different IER ID. So what we're going to do is we're going to swap this ID here with what's in this automation. And just make sure that okay. And let's just run this over in Query Studio just to validate what's going to come out so that we can take a look at the data and show how this is going to work in the journey itself. So let's run this. So what this is going to do is format the data so it aligns with the journey where this automation is connected to. Now, the purpose of the journey is literally just to update the individual email results record with the send from name and the send from email. So here's the journey that's doing that work. It's a relatively straightforward journey. It just has an object activity that's doing that update. So if we take a look at how this is working, let me just refresh that. And then let's go back to our query. Okay. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is for that individual email results ID for this contact, we're going to be updating the send from name and the send from email to this name and email address. So when we run it, we should see these two fields get populated in the individual email results. Let's go back to this journey and let me we'll take a look at this object activity just so you can show what it's functionally doing. So we've got we selected the individual email results object, and what we're doing is updating two fields. So for the send from email field and the individual email results object, we're using the send from email address field that we're populating in the date extension for the journey. So this query, send from email and send from name are fields in the date extension that we're sending through in the journey that's going to populate those records when we run the automation. So let's just quickly run this automation and so that we can see it in motion. And now that this is connected to the journey, it's going to hit save. I've got this pause so we can manually run it. So I'm just going to click run once. We're going to select all activities, and we're going to do this run now. So whenever you run an automation manually, you can come over to this tab and you can see it doing its working. But we'll pause on that for a second, come back here in a second while it's doing that work. So to set up this automation, all we did was, take the query that we had built, right? We created a query that, you can either do it in the automation itself, where you create the query separately. Added the query to this automation. That's the key functionality for this automation. And then to connect the journey itself, we built the journey, and we used the same data extension that we're using in this automation that's populating the data. So this IER update data extension is the data extension that we're using for this journey. So when we created this journey, we used that data extension. Because that data extension is attached to this automation, Cervelo sales push, automation name is IER update. Whenever you run the automation, once the journey is on, it will automatically create a journey activity here, which connects the automation with the journey itself. So let's go back and see. Okay, so it's processed that record. Let's go back to our running version. Let's see if something, okay, it looks like a record came through. This was 6 and now it's 7. Let's go back to this individual email results record. Let's just refresh this and see if we've got this data populated. Okay, there it is. There's that data populated in the individual email results record. So what wasn't there before is now populated. So now what a salesperson can do is, you can run a report for this email, and you can see for all of the sends, you could say, well, for which salesperson drop them into the campaigns, and you can see, well, did this salesperson, how many did they drop into the campaigns? How many did this other salesperson drop into the campaigns itself? So once that data point is populated from Marketing Cloud into Salesforce, you can use it in reports to populate all that. I kind of wanted to run a sample report, but the recipients that I sent earlier this morning that you saw in the send log, unfortunately, they're not getting the individual email results populated. So I apologize for that. It's a good takeaway. Sometimes it can take, a day. Sometimes individual email results don't get populated at all. So in this example, I had sent this email 4 hours ago, and still nothing sitting here in our individual email results. So I do apologize. I wanted to use an example. I had 2 different salespeople sends being sent through the journey. And I wanted to show you in a report and end-to-end see that, but unfortunately, I'm just not seeing those individual email results being populated. But hopefully we're able to see the end-to-end process of populating that data in Salesforce using an automation, and how to connect that individual email results, records, and data with the send log. So how to connect all of that data and what you can populate in the individual email results. So it's really up to you. There's a ton that you can do for each of these, and it doesn't literally just have to be the name and the email address. It can be a variety of different data points that you can populate back in Salesforce from Marketing Cloud. It sort of opens up that playbook. You don't have to just say, okay, well, whatever's in Salesforce are the default fields that come from Marketing Cloud. It's really open to whatever you need to populate. One more thing that I wanted to cover before that, let me just see if there are any questions on, okay. I have a little idea that the job ID for a send gets generated after send in SS&C, but just curious how the same job ID getting synced to IER object in CRM instantly. Yeah, so that's a great question. It doesn't get synced in instantly in CRM. So, as I just showed you, we typically see that an individual email results record gets populated like within 45 minutes to an hour. That's a typical use case. I don't know why it takes that long, but that's just, it is what it is. And as you can see from the example that we did today, it can take more than that. It can take more than 4 hours. And it can also not populate also as well. Sometimes there's bugs in the system. You can reach out to your account executive. But once that individual email results record is populated, that job ID is created as a record. So if you take a look, just to give that example, so if you take this particular individual email results record, and if we go into the records, into this object, and we find that record, you'll be able to see the job ID. These are those 4 records, the batch ID, job ID, list ID, all here that are getting populated. They're coming from Marketing Cloud, populated in the IER, and then synced back into Marketing Cloud. So this is how you can match the IER records with all the data that you're capturing at send time in the send log. Raja, did that help answer that question? Okay. One other automation I wanted to quickly show you that we weren't able to leverage today, but we were going to build it in if we were able to get those records populated, individual email results populated. More often than not, the send log that you have will be huge. So querying a send log that could be in the billions of sends is not really doable. So we typically will stand up like a preview or a mini send log for clients. So in this example, let's just put this in Query Studio. We can run it and see what this outputs. let me just keep that there just in case I need to go back to it. What this is doing is querying the send log, and then it's populating those key fields that I need, but it's only populating a certain day's worth, a certain time frame's worth. In this example, it's pretty, unique. Like I just want sends for the last 24 hours. Probably not the best use case. You might do, last 30 days or, 180 days. So what I had wanted to do was use, query this data extension instead of querying the actual send log itself. That's typically the use case that will stand up when you're connecting the IER. It's not actually querying the send log, but you create this send log preview data extension. You can query that itself. So you might want to, you might find it helpful whenever you're sort of like a standard automation is to just determine the time frame that works best for you. It could be 6 months, it could be 3 months, that you're actively using that data, on a regular basis to validate. And then just stand up a pretty basic query, which is take all the fields that you want to be outputted from the send log. And then you just run this, like ideally this probably should be like 180 days, right? So that's 6 months worth of data. And then that automation could run on a daily basis, and it could overwrite, the last 180 days worth of send log data, so that you're querying more hundreds of thousands of records or thousands of records instead of, millions and billions of records. So that can be a nice tip there. It's something that can be helpful. Does that make sense? Anybody have any questions on that, using that automation to help with send log, querying the send log? Okay, let's go back to the deck. And we'll go to just talk about again what we did today. So, we saw the individual email results objects. We started with that. We saw that these fields were blank, right? Because we had created those custom fields, and that data was populated in a synchronized data extension in Marketing Cloud. So the data that we wanted to populate here, we had sent an email. Because we were using AMP scripts, we populated that value in the send log, those values in the send log. And then we connected these two together to say, okay, I want the record that we used that was a record of the send, the time of send. We want to match that with the individual email results record and identify that record to send a journey to end up populating those fields on the IER record. I apologize for not getting to that report, but we'll maybe tackle that in a hands-on session. So tips before we wrap up, get to know the individual email results object in Salesforce. Obviously, you have to have the connection, and your use case needs to be, connected to Salesforce in order to need to leverage that. But find out where it is. If someone set up the connector, it's standard practice to add that to the lead and the contact records. So someone's probably set that up for you if you have the connector set up. See what you've got there for data. It's as simple as adding new fields to that object and then adding them to the page layout, like we showed you, and use it to customize what data points are going to be helpful for you for your use case. Be mindful whenever you're adding fields to the send log. Typically, the send log is one send log for one org, which they might be used by a variety of different people across the organization. So you typically, if you ever want to add new fields, you're going to want to validate it across the board, just so that you're not adding so many fields. Can add, can just make your data go through the roof exponentially. So just be very careful whenever you're doing that, and also name it correctly as well. That send log automation can be helpful, as we talked about, if you have a very large send log. I think we walked through today testing those individual records. So we wanted to do that exercise where I think I had sent like 9 different sends. We wanted to test populating, 1 or 2 records, which we showed today. We saw in the query where we just selected a particular individual email results record, and we populated that one record in the Salesforce environment. So definitely recommended when you're doing some population of records, make sure that you're testing that, on a case-by-case basis. And you may need to, depending on the volume of records that you want to populate, you may not want to use a journey for a large batch of records. You might want to use like a data loader or reach out to your CRM admin team to figure out the best way to do batch uploading. But on an ongoing basis, on a daily basis, this journey solution might be a good one to keep those records populated. But definitely test them with individual records before you go to large batches. And like we showed today, yeah, that IER record can be inconsistent on how long it takes to populate. Typically it is an hour, but it can take longer than that. So just a fascinating use case. We did work with a client who identified that there were a series of emails, quite a few emails, that those individual email results records weren't populating at all. And so we had to send those particular journeys, emails, and everything to Salesforce. And they worked through, figuring out what the issue was. There's nothing that they had done on the Marketing Cloud side. Sometimes there can just be some, in the very back end of Salesforce, things that are causing problems with those records being populated. So that can happen. That's it. Anybody have any questions? Okay, let's see. We use update DE for our custom semlog population. I just learned it's not actually needed if you use semlog field names. Yes, right. The update DE in a journey, you can certainly, or update DE, right? Yes, update DE AMP script function. Yep, you can do that. But yeah, it's easier. It's up to you. Definitely explore the, just like we do is set the variable. And that should work there for you. It is, I think, an API call. It's within Marketing Cloud, though, to use the update DE. But yeah, explore both options. I don't think the update DE is a bad option as well. It might be actually helpful in certain cases because that set variable is so simple. People might be like, well, what's this doing? I'm not really sure. Let's just delete it, Whereas the update DE is a little bit more intense code from a coding standpoint. So yeah, it's cool. It's a great suggestion, Raja. Any other questions we walked through today? Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, JB, for the time. It's a fun session. We've got a couple more Automation Studio sessions coming up, so keep on the lookout. I think there's one next Friday. We've got a couple more Fridays coming up. And have a great Friday. Thanks, everybody. Have a nice weekend, and we'll see you in our next session.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.
Thank you.